Hello and welcome to what is the first ever full-length episode of the Brit Iron Podcast. Today we're going to go through a run-through of the news and also talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are our fifth-ranked team, which I know Matt is very excited about.
Been waiting for this one. Can't tell.
Exactly, being a Bucs fan. And at the end as well, we got Matt's quickfire fantasy section. And I've got a little quiz for the boys, a little test of their knowledge and some player stats, which is pretty exciting. And of course, today, Matt is here, as we just mentioned. And we're also joined by Sam, who's looking pretty suave.
Dapper as ever.
Just got in from work, mate. You got to be looking good. First ever full length episode. I thought I'd put some effort in. Might have been nice for you boys to make the same kind of effort.
I feel like I'm quite, it's more Friday Cash for us, I think.
Yeah,
I
Friday Cash.
think that is more of a theme we're going for here. However, anyway, we should kick it off with the news, I believe, and the main talking point at the moment, obviously, is coronavirus. And over the past, week or so, we've had some names opt out for the 2020 season. I mean, it feels like they're dropping like flies. And in particular, if you're a Patriots fan, this doesn't look too good for you for this season, right? I mean, what was it, 8 or 9 they've had now drop out? So
yeah, but I think a lot of the players that are dropping out, their biggest issue is, I think, losing Hightower, purely because that now means that they have got, of their starting linebackers from last season, none of them are still there because they lost a couple to free agency. I believe one retired, and now you've got Hightower sitting out. So that's going to be a bit of an issue. Like, you might not kind of have that captain on the defense, the kind of play caller in the middle of the field. But a lot of the other guys they're not massive names, and I don't think this is a massive issue for Belichick just because
he's Belichick.
He's Belichick, and it's his. Like, defensively, especially, it's his system, not necessarily the players. Like, okay, if Stephon Gilmore came out and said that I'm sitting out, then that is a massive loss. Like, if the best cornerback in the league just says he's not playing for you anymore, that's a massive loss. But a lot of the other guys are just guys. There's no one there that makes me think, yeah, they could be an all-pro next year. So I don't actually think it necessarily changes their outlooks all that much. I think the one player that might kind of hurt them is Marquise Lee sitting out. But even then, there would have been questions around how productive he could be. So for the Patriots, at least, I think there's a load of players sitting out, but I don't think any of them are like crucial players.
I mean, on the Patriots front, I think we're seeing a bit of a Belichick using the system. Get some guys to opt out, get them to sit out. Ended up first pick. We got Trevor Lawrence. Keep the dynasty rolling. Oh, no.
It does all seem to play into his favour.
It just always seems
that is
to.
the tactic.
Anyone else but Belichick, and I wouldn't be as suspicious, but you just think he's on another level, isn't he? So, wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, he thinks things that no one thinks, so it wouldn't put it past him, in all honesty.
I mean, moving across to the same division, the big name that really stands out to me, who's coming out, and there's a lot of talk saying that he's not going to play, is CJ Mosley for the Jets. So that in a week now, you've lost, or a week and a bit, you've lost your starting all-pro safety and your Pro Bowl level linebacker. Two guys who, like, probably your two best defensive pieces are gone. That is massive for the Jets. And I think arguably, you could say that that's probably more of a positive, like, for New England. Like, New England probably come out of all of this better than they were before, because they're losing 9 pieces, but now they don't have to play Jamal Adams and CJ Mosley twice a year.
True.
I mean, the thing with CJ Mosley, obviously former Raven, getting paid a lot of money, but he did also miss, 14 games last season as well, so they must be gutted that they're paying him.
They thought they had him.
A big wage, and now 2 seasons pretty much they're missing from him. That must. I know obviously the contract's going to be well into next year, but it's still a year where he's not playing for you.
Well, it's the money that they doled out to him, and the money that they doled out to him was based on the fact that when in his tenure in Baltimore, he was a very high level linebacker. Like, the reason I mean, the Ravens would have kept him if they could, realistically, like if the cap had allowed. He's a very, very good player. And yes, he missed 14 games last season because of that groin injury. But I think, realistically, even if he comes back and he plays to 75% of how he played in his last year in Baltimore, I think that is a massive piece on that defense that they're missing. And it's a piece that they will have hoped that they would have had back and healthy and on that team. And I think they're really going to miss that.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's a lot of defensive players in the AFC East that seem to be opting out currently. I think there's almost been one from pretty much every team. So that's an interesting thing to track, because if that happens across the division, I mean, it's going to be good for all the offenses, especially maybe it's more of a fantasy thought on it. But like, I'm liking any fantasy player I've got in the AFC East at the moment.
Josh Allen.
Like, yeah. Any starting name in that it's looking it's looking quite nice for, especially if you play the Jets, because they've lost the two biggest pieces. But I think you're seeing it across the board. It's starting to be as well now. I feel like gradually the starters coming into, because I think at first it was sort of lesser names. Hightower was probably the biggest, and now it's some more of the star players. And I think currently it's pitched, for Wednesday. I'm recording this on a Monday, for the Wednesday to be the deadline. I wouldn't be shocked if in this next 48 hours we get a few more big names. As players now start to kind of make that almost, they've got a clock on it. They've got to make a call. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm glad they're capping it here. So this isn't going to be ongoing, because now everyone watching, getting ready for the season, the teams themselves going to go, right, this is what we've got. Obviously outside of the whole the COVID list and sitting people on that for isolation and everything, you at least know what you're going to have for the majority of the season now. Yeah,
it gives them something to plan for, I guess, at the end of the day. Just another name as well, which I thought was quite interesting. Damian Williams, running back for the Chiefs. Now that poses a really good opportunity for Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out.
The hype train and the ADP is through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to shoot through the roof on those drafts, right?
And potentially warranted, I think, for the majority of the season. This means he's got to come in and produce and perform. There's obviously a few other names there, but none of them you're expecting to take this job from him now. So it was expected from maybe like week 5 or 6, maybe a little bit later onwards. Now it's like, all right, get out there week 1.
This is scary for anybody in the AFC, in my opinion. Kansas City have just gone from being the team to beat overall on the season, but they could come out firing week 1 on all cylinders. Damian Williams, to me, this season was nothing more than kind of a hurdle for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Everyone expected Clyde Edwards-Helaire to win that starting gig at some point. Damian Williams, with a good postseason last year, kind of bought himself some games and some carries for this year. But realistically, he's 28. He's never been an overly productive running back in his career. I mean, last season he had less than 500 rushing yards on that Chiefs team. Yeah, that doesn't scream insane production and someone that I want as my running back 1 on my championship caliber team. That screams the kind of guy. I mean, he was splitting carries with Shady McCoy, who it's been clear that he's been kind of done since his last year in Buffalo. So I think this is actually just a really good thing for the Chiefs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It gets rid of that barrier. It's going to force them to put the younger playmaker out there, and I think he's going to be electric from day 1.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Definitely. Apart from the names we mentioned then, is there any other big names that would have an impact from them sitting out this season? There's the one I can definitely see, but I'll let you guys have a little look first, and maybe you can guess who the guy I'm thinking of is, because it opens up an opportunity.
I don't know if it'll be the same guy, but I think the one that actually came out today, which is Juwan James for the Broncos, starting right tackle. I think that's concerning for me. You've already got it. I know one of James's favourites, Lloyd Cushenberry, is looking like he'll be starting for them.
What a guy.
Now you're going to have another gap to fill on that O-line. And I'm a little bit nervous now because it's a young quarterback as well. Although Drew Lock is a guy who can get out of the pocket, he can make the plays if he needs to. You don't want him running for his life. And I think that just tempers expectations a little bit now on that offense, because you've got to see who's going to be starting there. How are they going to perform? So I think that's one for me. When it came out today, it was one of the first, main ones that's made me think, oh, That could have some big effects. And as well, like that team, you're looking at it to have running back production. Like we talked about it in our team previews on them. From Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay. It's just another complication to those two guys. So I think I'm a little bit nervous now about anything in Denver, just to see how this goes.
It all depends really on how the kind of guys that step into it. Obviously, like we said, James has kind of got his guy. The third round guy that they drafted,
Lloyd Cushenberry the third. Thank you.
And
third,
they also took a guard, I believe, in the 4th or 5th round, who was a bit more of a developmental guy. Who this kind of worries me if they're starting to force players onto the field that aren't quite ready at different positions because they're just trying to fill gaps. Then that, like you said, I actually think it'd have less impact on Drew Lock and a bit more impact on the run game.
Yeah.
And I think, especially early on this season, this team's identity could very well be the run game for the first 4 or 5 games, while kind of the young wide receivers and the young quarterback mesh. So that could potentially hinder them. But I don't think that he's kind of a ground-breaking loss at all.
No.
Again, looking down, obviously the Giants have lost Nate Solder. Probably not the end of the world for the Giants. It's probably still going to be a dodgy offensive line. We've just got to, as a Giants fan, you've just got to cross your fingers and hope that Daniel Jones doesn't take too many nasty hits, too many nasty sacks, and injure himself.
Good job you picked up Andrew Thomas. Now with that one coming out, I think if you hadn't, this Giants. It'd be very
would be down the drain. But you're now putting a shed ton of pressure on this young rookie to come straight into the league and perform, because if he doesn't, that offensive line is going to be a shambles. So
big pressure.
Yeah.
I think another name as well, I don't know if this might have been the original one, James, but Marquise Goodwin, just because I know we put a lot on him in our Eagles preview, being a speedy receiver in that offense. And you already know Deshaun Jackson, we talked a bit about him. You don't
get on that
quite
Rager
know
train.
What's going on in the background there with him, what kind of conditions he's on now. And he's an older guy, could easily get injured. So I think, potentially Jalen Rager he could be very nice for fantasy down the stretch this season and just general production. Because I think Wentz is going to love having him there.
It's great for Deshaun Watson as well. Deshaun Jackson, just because, like you said, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know if they've got, because of all the kind of off-the-field things that he has, this for Deshaun Jackson might be what he needs to keep him in the mix on the field, because they don't have the option to turn around. And it's all very well and good for like teams when they have to will put up with a lot more from players because they need the player there. I mean, how many teams has Josh Gordon been on that they've kept him around because he's that talented and there's so little other talent around him?
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, very good point. No, the name I was thinking of was actually Anthony Thomas. A wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is probably more of a bias pick.
Under the radar for me.
It's very much a minor one, if I'm honest. However, he was the primary punt and kick returner.
Okay.
So there's a rookie we picked up this year.
Here we go.
I knew. I was literally about to say, well, the guy out of SMU, James Prochet, can return. And then as I was about to say it, I was like, so this is why James has brought it up. James just wants to mention Prochet.
I'll back the hype here, though. I like the guy.
It opens up a big opportunity for James Prochet to come out, be the punt returner, perform there, and then, prove himself. Like
climb
I
up the
believe
rungs
he
on
can.
the ladder.
Exactly. So, and I mean, all of the other names that have opted out, some of the bigger ones, it does clear the way for some other of these little known names.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm actually kind of enjoying about this, is that whilst everyone's saying like 8 players opt out for the Patriots or stuff like this, it's like, actually, with everything that's going on, we might get one of these, like a really wacky year that you only ever see once in the NFL, kind of like back in the 80s I think it was the 80s, there was a holdout and they basically got in a bunch of nobodies to play an NFL season. And I believe the Washington Redskins played like half their seasons with people that normally wouldn't have made the NFL, and these guys kept the Redskins in contention right up until the holdout finished. All the regulars came back, and then Washington rode these players to a Super Bowl victory. And it, like one of these kind of just once in a blue moon happens, and you could see some really interesting players that usually wouldn't get a shot that get on the field because there is nothing else on the field.
I think on that as well. I think we're going to see some potentially like record-breaking stat lines where you've got lesser known guys, less experienced guys, especially early on, potentially playing against. It seems like a lot of the massive stars, the massive names, aren't sitting out yet or haven't said they're going to be. So you could get some ridiculous mismatches. And I'm thinking where you've got players across offensive lines sitting out, if you get a D-line that have all decided to play together and stay, you could get some outrageous like sack totals. And I think we're going to see a couple of just absolute
Do the Niners play the Giants?
Yeah, exactly. Like those sort of matchups now where it's going to set potentially a record for a game or on the season that is just going to be a massive outlier because of the matchups. I think it's going to be quite fun to watch at points.
Well, I believe the single game sack record for one player is 7 in a game. So we'll see if that happens. And I believe that's held by O.C. Umenora.
British legend.
Yep. Giants legend as well.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah, but, although there's a lot of negativity surrounding the whole situation with COVID and stuff, I think there's definitely some positive signs. And positive things to look out for, like you boys I've just mentioned there. Moving on to another sort of COVID-related situation, and that is the reserved COVID list. Now, this is one which is a bit different to the opt-out because they have to quarantine for, is it like 2 weeks or so, right?
I don't think they've confirmed the exact terms in it, but I imagine it's going to work similar to what it is in the MLB, which is around that, I think, because obviously it's not like the NBA or the NHL where you're sort of in a bubble. This is, obviously all the players are still relatively out and about, so I think it's going to be an interesting one to watch. Like, I think once we see that confirmed, we can properly understand sort of the effect the names on this list is going to have. But it's certainly not great at this stage because they're finally getting an off season. And then guys are being told, oh, by the way, you're going to have to miss, like, let's say 2 weeks of this. And then they've got to try and come back in with 3 weeks.
I actually think with certain players, like, it came out that Matt Stafford has been put on the PUP. It's effectively a physically unable to perform /COVID list at the moment. Yeah. Which you can stick someone on, they're not part of your roster, you keep them there for 2 weeks, then you slide them back on. It's basically an IR, but unlimited number of players, and you can do it for a while, and it's all a bit up in the air. But I think a lot of teams, for players like Stafford, they're probably, like, it would not surprise me if the Lions aren't sat there going, thank God. Like, yeah, I'd much rather have my quarterback get it at the start of training camp and just lose 2 weeks of training camp than have 5 weeks of training camp and then 3 weeks into the regular season or in mid-season lose my starting quarterback for 2-3 weeks. And if, okay, we don't have all the facts and we don't know that you can't have COVID multiple times and you can't carry it, but I mean, if it is one of those things that you get it once, then once you've had it, you don't really get it again. So that you only really need to do that like PUP list once. Then I would imagine that a lot of teams would probably rather have these players out at the start, like the front end of the season and during training camp, than at the back end when things start to get really, really intense. Especially if it's a player like Stafford who's already been in an offense and been in this system.
I think the difference is that with this list, it's not just players that have COVID. It's anyone that needs to isolate. So it could just be a friend, family member, just someone they've been around and they've been traced back to. So just because they're on it now, it doesn't mean anything. Like, you could have a player that's on it, has 2 weeks isolating, comes out for 2 days, happens to have, let's say, walked into a Starbucks with someone. Things get traced. Oh, they're gone again.
Yeah.
Like, it's as like fickle as that. But I think I get what you mean, that with players like Stafford, if it's a veteran guy returning to a similar scheme, it's not as big. I think a name that's on it, Minshew. The Jags, that's a bigger one.
That's
younger
a bigger
guy,
one, yeah.
Complete scheme and coaching change. That's going to have more of an effect. So I think it really is a player-by-player basis. And I think the Bucs have got Kershawn Vaughn, who's on it. And that's, for a rookie, I think the rookies are the worst case. Because now they're just missing the time they could finally get in the building.
Yeah.
And they can't.
An opportunity to prove himself.
It's a difficult one until we get all the facts around it. And I think their sort of teams are basically saying to the players, we're not going to really say if you've got it or not. It's up to you. If you want to release to people you've got it on your Twitter or whatever, go for it. So we're never going to really know the full details of who's had it, who did, who didn't, who's just isolating. It's a tough one to read into.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with what you're saying there, Sam, as well, but I think it's still an unknown quantity at this point as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think...
the effects could be lasting, right? You've seen certain cases of certain people who've been fit, they feel the effects 6 weeks after, and, it's such a moving situation that I think, although, ideally... they want to get early because most of these players will get over it very quickly or be asymptomatic. I think it's such a moving situation that I think they'd rather they just avoid.
Yeah. I think obviously everyone would, all the teams would rather just nobody has it. But first, like that, first of all, at this point, that's not going to happen. Like there are going to be players that come down with this over the next how many 20 weeks, however long we've got before. Kind of we hit the postseason, so that is going to happen. What is going to be interesting is just how transparent the league is, because you just know that Roger Goodell is going to be sat in his little basement on his big chair trying to figure out any possible way to avoid what's happened with the MLB, because I mean the commissioner of the MLB, and I don't follow baseball that much at all really. I just kind of keep up what's going on politically in it. And he's just been destroyed. They've dealt with it so badly. Everyone around the league hates their commissioner now. Okay, he was doing a couple of dodgy things before that, but I think they're going to try and play this as close to their chest as possible, just to try and minimise any tarnishing of the league.
Yeah, I think they're in a good situation as well, Roger Goodell and the NFL, because I think it's the last major sport to play during COVID times. NHL started the other day. MLB has been going on with issues. F1 started. Football over in England has started as well, and finished. So they've had so many use cases, if you like, where people have had to deal with COVID and stuff. That I think out of all the leagues, NFL's best positioned to deal with this, and that's why there'll be a season strongly.
It also seems like the NFLPA and the NFL, right from the off, there came out things they were having issues, but some of the leagues, when they were in discussions about going back, I mean, I know the NBA had a whole section of players that were suggesting they were going to form a breakaway league and that they didn't want to have anything to do with what the the NBA was proposing, anything like that. At least with the NFL, the majority of the stars in the NFL and the majority of the players, everyone was on a page and they just went, look, we want to play, we want there to be a season, let's work together to make it happen. Which is kind of what I've taken from what's happened in the last 4 weeks, which I think is really positive going forward.
Yeah, it's a good sign.
Yeah, 100% agree. Maybe we should move on to an un-COVID related news.
Yeah, slightly more
piece.
positive.
Yeah.
Let's cheer it up a bit.
And that is that David Njoku has, Browns tight end, has seemingly cleared the air after his trade request, and he's sort of rescinded it now. Which, positive signs for the Browns. They now got Austin Hooper and David Njoku. What do we make of sort of that piece of news and his ability to perform against Austin Hooper?
I don't think this is maybe done yet. I think you've seen normally where something like this comes out, you might see some kind of money involved. Like normally they might move the contract around, they might renegotiate certain parts, they might do something. With this, it's just he's changed his mind. So if we get to week 5, he's not getting the targets, he's not really being involved in this offense. Like if they choose Austin Hooper and Austin Hooper's beating him out, I wouldn't be shocked if before week 8, in a couple of weeks before it, from maybe around week 6-ish, this just comes back up again of, I want out. I think this completely now depends on, who knows what the Browns have said to keep him as well. they might have said, no, you're still our guy, and then suddenly you're going to have Austin Hooper on a ton of money. Like, excuse me? No.
Yeah.
So this isn't over, I don't think. This is just, they've kind of put a bit of tape over like a crack in the wall and gone, yeah, I'll hold it. But...
Something tells me this is one of those scenarios where, I mean, it happens in a lot of workplaces, no matter what you do. Someone comes and they want to leave because they want to go to greener pastures. Maybe they're getting offered a slightly better deal somewhere else, and then the original employer finds out and they kind of sell them this pipe dream of, no, stay with us because in a year we're going to pay you loads of money, and in a year you're going to be, and in a year, and it's just kind of this, right, don't worry because in a bit you're going to be the guy, in a bit you're going to be the guy. And it really wouldn't surprise me if he's not been sold one of these pipe dreams of, yeah, you are our guy, like we're going to pay you, you're going to be the number one, you're going to be like the next George Kittle, it's going to be great. And like you said, in 5, 6, 7 weeks, you could see, actually, because they've got such depth at tight end, and Njoku isn't getting the targets because there's not that many to go around, and you'll probably find yourself back where you are before week 8, and maybe he's on the trade block come week 8.
I think one risky thing with this as well, from his point of view, is obviously Jarvis Landry looks like he's on the pup list, at least to start the year, so we don't know when exactly he's going to come back, what it's going to be like. So it might mean early doors, there's a few more targets to go around. But then, potentially too late for him to do anything about it. It flips, he comes back, suddenly it's like, oh no, the targets are going to Austin Hooper. So I think Njoku's in a really odd spot for such a talented guy who should just be a tight end one on this team. Right. He should be the guy at the top of that depth chart. So it's gonna be an interesting one to watch. And I think there's essentially any of the other 31 teams in the NFL could come out quids in on this. Because if you get Njoku suddenly 6 weeks in going, I want out. No. And like you've got to think this year where players could, if they really wanted to, be like, oh, sorry, I've interacted with someone who's got COVID, just found out.
Yeah,
got
not playing.
Not playing.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about it for that bit. Like I think you're gonna get some very weird, interesting scenarios of players being probably more from their agents, I'd imagine, finding like weird little loopholes to try and put pressure on teams. It's gonna be interesting.
Well, agents always seem to have a play in these sort of things, I suppose, don't they? But yeah, I guess it comes down to if she's really buying it at the moment, which it seems like he is buying what they're telling him. But yeah, I think down the line we'll see what happens, and I can see him maybe next year not being there. Just see how this is.
I wouldn't be there if I was him. If I was him, I'd be looking for out. Try and like another team would be able to pick him up relatively cheap. His stock's not majorly high at the moment. He's not had a massive breakout year. Yeah. He wants to get somewhere where he's going to get the targets to prove that he can have a breakout year, so that he can go and get that big second contract.
And I would say actually get to a quarterback who you know what you've got in him. Because I think Baker, you're going to see a very up-down, all over the shop career at points. I think that's going to be, at times he'll look like an MVP, at times he'll look like Jameis Winston at his worst. Like, picks everywhere.
Well, fingers crossed it works out for him, because I think he's got a lot of talent. But we'll just have to see what happens, I guess, for this season.
We'll have to wait and see.
I have to wait and see.
Oh, I had to get that one in there.
That moves us nicely, very swiftly on to the number 5 seed team preview. Obviously, this is continuing from our season preview series, where we sort of ranked all the teams, 32 all the way down to 1. And this is our number 5 seed, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we've got pitted out at 11-5. And this is a team, I don't think we'd have them this high last season.
Oh, if you'd have told me at this point last year, or in the last 2 years, that you're going to be able to actually have a conversation with you lot, that the Bucs are potentially a team we've agreed are around the 5th best in the league potentially, should be pushing on for a playoff spot potentially, and even a positive win record on a season, I'd have probably just laughed and been like, oh, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? I'll throw a tenner on that because odds will be great. And now I'm suddenly sat here like, oh, I could actually have I might be able to be interested in January as a fan of a team, like be back in my team. It's a nice. Yeah. I'm just happy to be able to have this conversation. It's great.
I mean, it all comes down to the 2 acquisitions, in my opinion, of Gronk and Brady, albeit an aging Brady today. 3rd of August, his 43rd birthday. So, Tom, if you're watching,
happy birthday,
happy birthday, mate.
Happy birthday, mate.
I'm sure he's listening somewhere in Tampa.
I think He's too busy enjoying a beer with his hypermodel wife.
I've heard he's a fan.
I don't think he's going to be watching our podcast.
I don't know.
Waiting to see if we wish him a happy birthday.
Not to be forgotten, you got Rojo as well, 23. All the Bucs having their birthdays today.
Jeez, there you go. What day to be talking about the Bucs?
Wait, Rojo's only 23.
Mm-hmm.
Today.
Mm-hmm.
How depressing is that?
He's younger than us.
Oh my lord.
Yeah, it's a sad truth. But back to Brady. Do you guys reckon he can be Brady this season, or is it just?
Well, I hope so. I mean, it is his name.
Wow, we got witty banter already.
Wow,
I love it.
I think Tom Brady's not been like Tom Brady for the last year or two. Like, he wasn't when they beat the Rams. He wasn't incredible. He's been on a slow. What Brady's not doing, which most quarterbacks do, is just drop off a cliff. Like, Brady's not got to a point where he goes from having an MVP year and he's throwing 50 touchdowns a year to off a cliff, misses half the season, and then throws 10 touchdowns to 10 interceptions kind of year. Like, Peyton Manning went from being an MVP to being awful inside of 12 months. It literally just went like that, and it happens to a lot of quarterbacks. They just fall off a cliff. Something goes, they get a bit older, and they don't want to put the same kind of work in. Brady's done everything he needs to do to kind of stop that falling off of a cliff. He doesn't have the arm that he used to, and he's never had a big arm in general. The thing that Brady brings that obviously you didn't have with Jameis is Jameis, in my opinion, has a much bigger ceiling at this point than Brady does. Like, objectively, Jameis, at his best, can probably play better than Brady now. The issue is that Jameis will come out and he will play 30 plays a game at his best. He will play 30 plays a game just as an average quarterback, and then he'll play another 20 plays a game that are so terrible that you just don't understand how he's made it onto a roster, and it's those plays that just erase everything else.
Yeah.
Brady will come in and he will be average. He will be Andy Dalton. He's not going to be incredible. He's not going to throw to win games. He's going to not turn the ball over, and he's going to get the ball quickly, efficiently into the ridiculous set of playmakers that they have. And that is enough to win them a lot of games.
I think that's the biggest thing, is especially compared to maybe last year on the Patriots, he's actually maybe a lot of his years in the league, this is one of his best set of weapons. This is up there in that conversation as all the offensive weapons together. And I think it's going to buy him a year or two compared to how he's been playing, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm going to be higher on him. But I'm not one of, because I have seen it on Twitter, there are some Bucs fans that are like, oh, we're getting MVP Brady, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league, he's going to be this, he's going to be that. Realistically, he doesn't need to be that.
No.
I think,
and you're not paying him to be that.
He's got enough around him that I think we just need him to not lose us games. Because I've had enough of that. I've had years of that with Winston, like just losing us games. And that was even with a defense that was, don't want to talk about it back then. So like, we don't need MVP Brady. We just need a locker room leader who's gonna bring this, like, put a winning character to this team. Like, he is showing up, and the expectation for him is he is getting another ring. And I think that's what we need. I think we've got potentially a very motivated Brady, because he will always, if he doesn't win anything outside of New England, be called a system guy, a Belichick guy.
Yeah.
And I think now you've got just a brilliant combination of all these weapons, a very motivated Brady, and Bruce Arians, who, as a coach, he's worked with all the different quarterbacks. Like, he's got a Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, and he's already said he's letting Brady have a massive input into this offense. And I think that, for me, you're either going to get the best of both, or a kind of Frankenstein's monster. There is a tiny part of me that's worried about if this isn't going to mesh, but I think if it does,
it'll be incredible.
It's a massive year for Arians as well, because he's, like you said, he's got this kind of Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks that he's worked with. The thing that he's missing, which is kind of, will always be the kind of tarnish on his record is he's not won a Super Bowl as a head coach, and there's that could be the deciding factor for someone like Arians on the Hall of Fame, and he's going to want that. They've got all the talent around him to do that, and Brady has won Super Bowls with much worse around him. Brady went back his first couple of Super Bowls. Brady was not a great quarterback. When you go back and those 3 early Super Bowls he won those off of, I mean, there was the Tuck Rule game, which was a questionable decision whether they should have won that game, and a couple of really clutch kicks from Adam Vinatieri. They won those off of the back of great defense, and Brady was a game manager. It wasn't really until 2006, 2007 that he kind of came out and started asserting himself as like, oh wow, this guy can like really throw the ball as well. And you got Randy Moss going for 23 touchdowns in a season, and the almost undefeated season. Like, other than that, the first couple years he wasn't incredible. You get that Tom Brady, which Tom Brady at the moment is much closer to than he is his like 2016 Tom Brady, who just destroyed the Falcons in a half of football. But I think that's fine because you've got a good young defense, you've got a number of pieces, you've got amazing weapons. You just need him to not do a Jameis, and you need him to throw less than 7 interceptions in a year, and you'll probably make the playoffs. And at that point, I'm taking Tom Brady in any playoff game, no matter how old he is, because it's Tom Brady.
And what he's also got is a nice little running back room as well.
Oh, it does indeed.
I mean, as of, was it yesterday or was it Saturday? So a couple of days
over the weekend.
LaShawn McCoy signed. As you also got Ronald Jones as well. We mentioned Keyshawn Vaughn as well, the rookie. Obviously, currently on the COVID reserve list, so not sure when he'll be back. But that is quite an exciting running back room, right?
Yeah, for me, there's a lot to it. I think Rojo's been... He's a guy, I think, even before we had him on the Bucs, he was a player I wanted on the Bucs. I think in college there was points where he's just explosive. I think we've seen snippets of that. What hasn't helped him is Arians is a guy of, if you make one mistake, you miss a block, you're out.
Yeah.
And then if you do it again in the game, you're out the whole game. Like, you might miss like a quarter, but 2 mistakes and you're not getting near the ball again unless he literally has to. So I think that's hindered him a bit. But I think what we've got now is we've got 4 young running backs there. We've got Ronald Jones, you've got Keyshawn Vaughn, Ogunbowale, and Raymond Calais, who we took in the 7th round, I think, of this year's draft. So we've got a group of young guys. They've bought in McCoy as experience. He's going to get carries here and there, and it's going to be what we need.
Yeah, but I don't like that, though.
For me, as a team, I really like it for it's what we need around these running backs. Because I think there is a part of this where we've got almost the old experienced guys at so many positions dotted throughout this team, mixed with an infusion of youth, but we didn't at running back. And I think that's been part of the problem. So I think this is a guy that you can learn from if you're one of these running backs.
I just don't like... I don't like when you've got this guy, because he will come in and he'll steal the annoying carries. And it's... I like to see, I mean, from a fantasy standpoint, really annoying because you don't know who's getting the ball. But just from a football standpoint, when you've got a couple of young backs, I like to see these guys get carries, get worked into the league. And for me, I just don't see where the value in McCoy comes from actually on the field. 2 years on the trot now, he's looked lethargic. He ran for less than 500 yards last year, and at one point he was effectively splitting carries on that Chiefs offense. Like, he's probably a Hall of Fame running back, but he's not a good running back anymore. He's not Adrian Peterson. He's not Frank Gore. He's done, in my opinion. And I don't really see why you would bring him in to do nothing other than just steal the odd carry. And I would rather those carries go to the young guys, give them the experience, like, let them build up. Because the thing is, this is a team that, yes, it's built to win now, but you've got so much young talent that if you can figure out what's next after Brady, because Brady's a 1 or 2 year plug and play and he's done. But if you can get someone who comes in behind him who can be a system guy, you could be built to win for the next 4 or 5 years as well. So I'd like to see the young guys get as many carries as possible.
I think the interesting thing for me on that one is you're happy for someone to come in and sit behind Brady and pick his brain when you've said you think Brady's pretty much done, or he's way down on what we've seen from Brady. Yet with McCoy coming in on a veteran minimum, no money, just to, even if he gets carries early on and then loses out the job, he's then in and around that facility. He's there, the young guys can pick his brain.
But
like, it's a veteran in the building, which I love.
I agree with that, but for me, it's a bit different with, it's a running back position, which is, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that listen to this and come at me hardcore for it, but I mean, running back is one of, if not probably the easiest position in the league to adjust to, because a lot of it, yes, I'm not saying that it's not a bit high football IQ and you don't get these players, but it's the most physical, and at the end of the day, a lot of running backs, you can be a great running back off of the fact that you are just a physical freak. I mean, like, Derrick Henry, like, he's a freak. He can, if he runs at a gap for enough times, he's gonna get yards. And his efficiency at times in his career has not been good. He's had production off the fact he gets a shed load of carries, and he just is massive and hard to bring down. And LaShawn McCoy is also not known for being someone who's a great mentor and a great locker room guy.
Neither's Brady. Garoppolo had to get out of there. No,
I agree, but I think Brady will be much more receptive now that he's 3 years ago, Brady in New England, he was of the mindset of, right, I'm here for another 5 years, this is my building, I don't want to get kicked out early. Brady coming into Tampa knows he's only there for a year or two, so I think he'll be much more open to mentoring and working with a younger guy. And even if he's not, just sitting and watching how Brady prepares, and watching the greatest of all time do it, whether he's helping you on the X's and O's is one thing. LaShawn McCoy is a very good player, but he's not known for being a great locker room guy. And at the end of the day, it's the running back position. I would much rather have my guys getting as much on-field learning than talking it through with a LaShawn McCoy older guy, if you know what I mean. Obviously, there will be people who disagree with me, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, so my question around this one is, would they have done this a year ago without COVID? Because
that's a very good point.
Currently, Keyshawn Vaughn and Raymond Calais, and also Cedric Ware is another running back on the roster. All three of those are on the COVID reserve list, right? So bringing on McCoy brings an extra body in who's experienced, can fit in, day one. Is he just there just to cover, just in case maybe
I think he's a body
goes down?
As well,
exactly. I think that's the value he brings. Yeah,
he might not even make week one.
Exactly. He's on a 1 year deal, so this works out quite well in that regards. He can easily cover if someone goes down with COVID or,
he's a guy to come in and do a job. It's just I would, if he makes the final 53 and he's there and he's stealing a couple of carries a game, to me that's just annoying. I'd rather get the young guys out there, see what they've got, because we know what McCoy's got left, and there's not much gas left in the tank. He's running on fumes at this point.
Yeah, for me, I should be annoyed. I've got Rojo and Sean Vaughan in our Dynasty League, so I should be fuming about this. But I think just I like it as a move for the team.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
But, I think he's got more value than stealing snaps away from rookies. That's all I'd say. But maybe we should move it on to fantasy, if that is okay with you boys.
Certainly.
And looking towards that tight end room, obviously we mentioned Gronk, big name, coming out of semi-retirement, I guess you could call it. I think it was quite predictable. I mean, who didn't see that coming, But that tight end room is pretty tasty. We've already got Cameron Brate, OJ Howard in there as well.
Yep.
For fantasy, what sort of values are we putting on these guys?
It's a very difficult one for me. I think you're waiting. Obviously, Gronk's going to be drafted mainly off of the name, but also because you're assuming it's Gronk and Brady. So Gronk is going to be the one out of these three. But for me, I think since he was drafted, there's always been this thing around OJ Howard of he could be incredible. Like physically, he's got everything you need for him to be just great. But he just hasn't quite done it yet. He's had a couple of injuries here and there, which is concerning. But you almost couldn't give him a better quarterback to do it with at this point. It's Brady. He loves his tight ends. He loves two tight. He can have two productive tight ends, especially like fantasy wise. So I think this could be a huge season for OJ, where people have the expectation isn't there as much this time around. Like last year, it was almost like a fever pitch but it just didn't happen under Arians. Now you've got Brady / Arians' offense, and I think the only thing you're going to see bought in is Arians is now going to allow him to use a tight end, essentially.
I think as well, Howard is probably likely to have the most on-field snaps of these guys. I think Gronk will undoubtedly be the money guy. So when you're inside the red zone or you're on a third down, because it's Brady and Gronk will be on the field. And even on probably third downs and shorts, where they're potentially running, potentially throwing, probably have Gronk on because he's just a monster in the run game as well. But they'll be very wary of keeping Gronk healthy. And the other thing is Gronk is going to be a big thing. They're looking past the regular season at this point, and they're going, right, we want Gronk healthy so that when we're in the NFC Championship game and it's fourth quarter and we're on a crucial third down, we want Gronk on the field, healthy, ready to catch that money pass from Brady, because we know that's what they do. So I think that OJ Howard could be big in between the 20s. It's just he'll be on the field a lot. He's younger, he's healthier, he's more athletic at this point, and so I think that actually for fantasy, OJ Howard is the much better option. It's just Gronk could have the touchdown upside. Yeah. But you've got all the other... He's taken a year off. We don't know what kind of shape he's in. Yeah, he's already got all sorts of injury concerns. So I actually wouldn't be drafting Gronk just because there's too many questions for me. I think OJ Howard would be the one that I'd want to take a flyer on.
I think my thought on Gronk as well when we signed him was obviously getting a player like that is when you've already got Brady. It's just like, obviously you're going to be happy about that. Yeah. But I was more thinking of it as like, forget the red zone, forget him catching it in January, purely, as you said, in the run game, like for blocking, because that's going to be an issue.
He is
our O-line still needs bits of work here and there, but you bring in someone like Gronk, even if he's lost a bit off his 40, he's not quite what he was. Blocking is easier for him to do longer into your career.
Yeah,
like it's something you can maintain.
McCoy will be getting a solid 3 yards of carry behind that.
I think the other name as well
monster.
We can't not talk about is Cameron Brate. There was a point before OJ Howard was in the system, before we took him, where Brate looked good, and he got on a page with Jameis and he looked like a good tight end in the league at that point, and in fantasy he put up numbers. He was a big guy in the red zone. Like he got, I can't remember the exact number of touchdowns, but he put up numbers. So I think as well, if either Gronk gets hurt or OJ gets hurt, or if just Brady seems to pick out Brate and be like, hang on, I like throwing to this guy, I can rely on this guy. He's going completely under the radar. That you're not going to draft him, you're not doing anything stupid. But any of these guys could have the upside in fantasy, but for me it's OJ, Brate, and then Gronk, personally.
What's potentially very stressful is the fact that all of these guys could have relevance on the field, which means that none of there is a scenario in which you don't want any of these guys on your team, because each week they all go out and they all get 2 targets, and you're taking a pot shot each week on which one gets the red zone target that turns into a touchdown. So
I think for me on that one though, then if it looks like that, you're still leaning OJ, because if any of these guys are going to get it on the 50 and take it to the house, it's OJ.
Yeah,
he's got that in his locker. But we've all got. Actually, me and James got skin in the game on this, because I've got OJ, James got Gronk in our dynasty. So I think we both know there's going to be weeks where we're looking at the other you got the right side of the coin this time.
Picks him up on the waivers for free. I didn't spend any fab on him, so I'm pretty happy with that. But Sam, you mentioned it there, the year off. I'm a bit hesitant as to what impact that will have on him this season. I guess, we won't know until the season starts.
Fingers crossed he comes back healthier.
Oh,
That's the main thing.
Would love
Hopefully
to see
he's
that.
not as beat up, and if we could just, even if he only plays one season there, it would be really nice to see kind of one final season with the two of them, and I'd love to see them go out on top. I must admit, I don't want to see, as a Giants fan, I don't want to see the Bucs win. I
Because I
think
support them. Let's be
there's-
honest.
Yeah, that's the main reason.
You don't want to deal with me if they do win it.
no, but it would be nice to see Brady and Gronk go out on a high together.
Mm-hmm.
Walk into the sunshine.
Yeah, just a
Yeah.
nice story. And I'd like to see Arians win a ring, to be fair.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Me
with
too. We hit it
that.
off.
Matt definitely does.
I mean, we haven't covered it as well. One bit I do want to touch on for fantasy quickly is the wide receivers as well.
Yes, yeah.
Like, I think Godwin, is going to take the step to be more of in terms of fantasy, the guy in this offense this year. Just purely because he, I think, is better in the slot and in the routes that I think are going to be more of the short to medium routes that Brady is going to throw more often.
Yeah.
Evans will still have value. I mean, he's been
Yeah,
over 1,000 yards every season.
Every year.
With, Jameis. He's going to be able to do it with Brady again. But I think Godwin is going to he's going to kick on. He had a great year last year, and he's shown that he can do it. So I think as long as he stays healthy, because obviously he did get hurt at the end of last year, something to keep an eye on as a guy who's still relatively young. But I think Godwin's got massive, massive potential for this season. Again.
Completely agree with everything Matt just said. I don't think you really need to say anything else on that wide receiver call.
No,
There is one name, if I'm allowed to.
Don't say it!
Oh,
Don't
What?
do it.
Good.
Don't say it.
I mean, I was just going to talk about Tyler Johnson.
Okay, good.
Who do you think I was
yeah,
going to
hold
bring
on.
up?
Who was going to say? I'm
Yeah.
looking at. I can't see many controversial names on the wide receiver room.
One sec. I think I got a player mixed up.
Yeah, I think you're thinking. Yeah, you're thinking someone.
I'm
who's
thinking
gone.
last season. I'm
Yeah.
thinking last
But, hey.
season. I thought. Yeah. I thought you were going to bring up the old Brashard Perriman, and then I realised
No.
that he's moved on. He's moved on.
Oh,
I mean, well, that
God.
actually, his name was going to come up, but not in the same way you're thinking. But basically, Tyler Johnson, 5th round pick out of Minnesota. He looked good in college, off in a shaky team, shaky quarterback play, and statistically, if you average it out, he was up there with other wide receivers, just coming out of smaller school. He's just a lesser known guy, and I think he is a potential talent that we've got there. He's going to take a bit of time to develop. He's going to have
Where did you say he came out of?
Minnesota.
Oh, they had a good year last year.
He's going to have to fight, though, because you've got Scotty Miller, who rapid, is incredibly fast. Currently, it looks like he's edging it for that number 3 spot. But I think as the season progresses, Tyler Johnson could really start to emerge. And again, it's not someone you're drafting. It's someone that if Evans or Godwin goes down, and he seems to be developing, you've got your fab there for a reason. And don't be shocked if this time next year, he's someone you're drafting late on.
That's
and
a
then the
big
year
thing.
after, he's creeping up again.
It's a massive thing we haven't really mentioned on any of our episodes, our preseason episodes or anything we've done yet, is kind of how your players for fantasy, you really need to appreciate the fact that you don't win your fantasy league off of your draft. Your draft gives you the basis to win your fantasy league, but then what's actually going to win it for you is going out and making the right trade or the right free agent move at the right time.
Yeah.
Like if you were in on James Conner at the right time 2 years ago, you probably rode that all the way to the playoffs of your league. Yeah. Like you will have done if you were on the right player at the right time. A lot of the time, you spend your fab cleverly, then you're gonna really see the payoff there. So don't kind of overvalue fab. If there's a guy who's looking like he could be the one who you could ride your championship to, go out and spend 60% of it on a wide receiver who's turning into a top 10 wide receiver. Yeah. Don't worry about fab.
Yeah, it's there to be spent.
Like,
exactly.
And just a final note on the wide receiver front. Whoever that number 3 is, very small shoes to fill. That's all I'll say. So,
Yeah.
So
there we go.
It'd be easy for them to step in there. However, the one more, and probably the final part on this Buccaneers team that we should talk about, for fantasy anyway, is Tom Brady, perhaps. No, I'm not going to draft him, personally, just because of the way my draft normally runs. But where do we sort of value him on the QB rankings, and where would you expect to be able to pick him up, perhaps?
His ADP is a little high because he's Tom Brady and because he's got all these weapons. And I think I wouldn't be shocked if he is a QB1. I'm not saying high and I'm not saying top 5, but if he's a QB1 on the year, if he has a little bit of a resurgence and this offense plays to what it could, to its ceiling. But I think that's too much of a gamble for me, for what else you can get around it. And as much as I'd love to have Brady just sort of for this year as a Bucs, but I think even for me, I don't think I'd be drafting him. I think his ADP's too inflated for me.
Yeah, see, it's tricky because if this team plays like good, solid football, there's definitely a world in which Brady is a top 10 quarterback off of the weapons.
Yeah.
But then again, there's also a world if they're playing good football and they're getting game scripts and they just run the ball. There's also a world where he's a low teens quarterback just off the fact that he's not throwing the ball much. You don't need to run the ball, check down, win games that way. So he's kind of someone I wouldn't want to touch because I don't think the ceiling's there. I don't think for other players that you could pick up that have got like a Drew Lock, I'd much rather take a swing on Drew Lock having some outrageous boom year than taking a swing on Brady being just average. I can see Brady being average, quarterback 14 on the year. Not going to set the world on fire, not going to lose you weeks. But for me, I want the more exciting player. I want Drew Lock. I want Daniel Jones. I want someone else in that kind of Carson Wentz in that category who, they could put up absolute duds of weeks, but they could also just explode out of nowhere. Which I'm not saying Tom Brady can't do, but he's not as fun for me. I don't think he's going to be a fun player to have.
I think a big bit you hinted at there was the game scripts. I think we haven't really covered it too much, but this defense could really develop this year. I mean, we've already, against the run game last year, were good. We were a good defense against that run game, and we've kept the front 7, which I think is going to be huge. And in this division, if you can't stop the run, you're not getting near the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true.
In the NFC South, and we've shown we can do that. And I think with Todd Bowles having another year with his defense, we've picked up some more some more players who can contribute. And I think my big thing is as well, you've got Devin White coming into his second year. And I think you're going to see a partnership at linebacker for the Bucs between Lavonte David and Devin White that could be incredible for this year. And finally, Lavonte David might get the credit he deserves because he is criminally underrated. I'm not even going to get into it. I'm not going to pull a Sam on Russell Wilson in our Seahawks preview, but it's outrageous. But I think Devin White as well, I think this time next year he's in the NFL top 100 list. I think this year he is going to come out and be good. And I think it's going to set a tone for this defense. I think this defense is going to step up massively. And that's why I think what Sam's saying there on Brady, if the game scripts go that way, he might not be a QB1. Just purely not off his play. Just because it's not needed.
Similar to what we saw with Teddy Bridgewater from last year when that run of 5 games. I mean, he won 5 starts and the team looked good and he was playing well, but he was not a fantasy star by any means because at the end of the day, the players most of them don't give a rat's ass about fantasy. They want to win games. And if that means, if Tom Brady could win 15 games next year and throw for 100 yards or less in every game, he won't care because he'll have won 15 games. That is
100%.
Yeah, doesn't even cross their mind. However, I believe that is a good way to end our conclusion to the Bucs team. A lot of potential there. We've got them 11-5, and I firmly believe they can do that. Yeah. And that brings us very nicely onto Matt's fantasy quickfire part of the podcast.
So yeah,
what a segment!
Exactly. So what I'm going to be doing here, boys, is I've got a little quickfire question for you. I'm going to pitch it to you, and we're going to go to Sam first, and then you, James.
Nice.
And I want a nice, quick, punchy answer on this one. So, what we're looking at is a half PPR redraft league.
Okay.
It's round 11. You haven't gone near your QB yet. You're feeling like your roster's stacked. You're happy with where you're at. You've decided that in this round, in round 11, you're going to commit, you're going to take your quarterback. There's been a couple starting to go off the board at round 10, and you don't want to be left with nothing. I've got 3 names that I'm saying you have to pick between here.
My guy's not there.
Well, because I'm going to put this out. You're not taking Daniel Jones round 11.
No
That's
way.
still a little. You can get him later.
Can I
you have to pick between these 3 players.
Can I take Rashad Perriman and
No way.
Daniel
No
Jones
way.
as well?
No.
Not a chance.
Okay. I mean, not even I'd take Perriman in the 11th. But anyway. So you're sat there round 11. You've got Jared Goff. You've got Cam Newton. And you've got Drew Lock. You've got to take one of them. You're on the clock, Sam.
Okay.
What are you thinking?
Right. If not for Marquise Lee and all of everything going on with New England at the moment and losing players, I probably would have taken Cam. But when you take everything that's going on at New England at the moment, the fact that Cam is a big question mark because he hasn't played a full season in a couple of years, we don't know what the shoulder's going to be like. I'm steering clear of him up until the point that we're getting some positive things out of camp. If I'm drafting a week before the start of the season and I've had some great news out of camp from Cam, then that might be different. But I'm avoiding Cam. I think I'm going to take Drew Lock in this scenario because Jared Goff, without the stellar offensive line that they had 2 years ago when they went all the way to the Super Bowl, Jared Goff looked a hell of a lot shakier last year. Without Brandon Cooks on the field all the time, he might not necessarily be as productive. Really, to be fair, I really like Cooper Kupp coming back, and Cooper Kupp is a real my guy, if you will.
Yep.
For fantasy, I love Cooper Kupp, but I think I would rather take the potential low of Drew Lock, but just having the excitement of, he could really go off and throw for 400 yards. I think Drew Lock's going to be a more interesting quarterback and with a higher ceiling.
So you gone Drew Lock. I mean, for me, it was a toss-up between Cam Newton and Drew Lock. Jared Goff, just not my guy, if I'm honest with you. Not 100% convinced by him. Drew Lock, a lot of weapons there. But the thing with Cam Newton is he's going to Belichick, right? Mm-hmm. And Belichick, I believe, can get the best out of him. I know there's issues around the Patriots and losing players to the COVID list as well, but we mentioned it at the start of the podcast, this gives an opportunity for other players to step up and step in. So that would be an unknown quantity, so it would be a bit more of a risk. But I believe that Belichick and the OC there can really get the best out of Cam. So that would be why I'm tending to head towards Cam. But with Drew Lock at a very close second, because I think that boy is very talented and expecting a lot of big things from him. But Cam just edges it for me.
That's interesting for me because I would actually be going Jared Goff. I think for me, I'm playing off of Sean McVay having a longer off season, we had it all mixed up. Everyone was at home. He's been locked away, and if that mind just locked away, scheming, coming up with new stuff.
That's a scary thought, isn't it?
That could be very interesting, and I think it was a down year for Goff, and I think he's going to bounce back. The question is how high, but I think at around 11 value, he's going to bounce back high enough.
Goff is the most talented quarterback of the 3 there, I think, in terms of right now, he is the best of the 3 quarterbacks in the league. I just think Drew Lock's got that kind of massive boom potential. Whereas Jared Goff, for me, I don't think. I think McVay knows what Goff is, knows what he does best. Will scheme an offense that works very well for him. But it's very rare, I think, that you're going to see Goff just kind of go off. I mean, he has done it before. I mean, I remember watching that Chiefs-Rams game that was like the third highest scoring game of all time, and Goff has got an arm on him, but he doesn't have that gunslinger feel to him. And to be honest, if I'm taking a quarterback in the 11th round, I'm probably sorted at all my other positions, and I just want someone that week to week I'm going to watch and kind of just want to see him air it out.
I think that's the thing for me is with Cam Newton, you've got that running base, you've got that baseline for fantasy, which is always good, and it is Cam. If you get a healthy Cam Newton, he's going to really push either of these guys, I think, in terms of just pure talent. He's obviously got a bit less around him, which is the thing that kind of, for me, rules him out. Drew Lock would have been a pretty close coin flip for me on Jared Goff or Drew Lock, but with John Taylor out, I'm worried about that line, and I think you're going to find that maybe it will develop and be fine in the back half of the season, and you'll see Drew Lock living up to this hype that is starting to build there and really kind of serves all his weapons properly. But I think Goff is going to be the more consistent, and for me in fantasy, what I want from my quarterback is don't lose me the week. I'm drafting the rest of my lineup to have a boom week and win it for me. For me, I would like my quarterback to just be like in our dynasty. I have Carson Wentz,
says
who
the
is
guy
a
who ran
consistent guy. Oh yeah, I ran with Jameis.
Guy who ran with Jameis last year.
I ran with Jameis just because he in fantasy is relatively reliable. He could throw 3 picks, but normally he's going to throw enough to make up for it. Fantasy terms, Jameis was reliable.
Yeah,
in terms of a football sense, don't even talk to him. But in fantasy, Jameis is a reliable guy. But like, I think it's interesting. I was thinking as I was like writing that one out and planning that one, I was like, I think I know how this is going to go. And if I'm drafting behind the both of you, I'm going to be fine.
I mean, I wouldn't take any of those 3 in actual life anyway. So
the thing with Cam is I've probably gone for the higher risk one there. I believe he's got the most to prove out of the 3 as well.
Yes,
so
definitely.
That could really push him on.
A motivated, healthy Cam Newton.
Exactly, and a former MVP, which Rookie of the Year as well. Back in 2011.
Cam's got a very good chance to finish as the quarterback 2 on the year.
Exactly. So, wait, Daniel Jones number 1 is that you put in?
Yeah,
of course.
Daniel Jones.
I sort of agreed with that and then realised what you said. But yeah, high risk, high reward with him, and I'm taking a punt on that. A firm punt.
I back that. It's nice.
Right. And this moves us on to my quiz section.
What have you got for us, James?
Here we go.
So, this is
Is this going to be horrible like the last one you gave us? It's like
I hope this one's a bit better.
You're going to throw us some stats from like a college Div 3 team.
Yeah.
I really hope this one is a bit easier because for those listening, when we did a few of our unreleased episodes, the early ones, I did the same format of what we're about to do, and some of the stats I listed off were incredibly difficult, incredibly niche.
And I still pulled out the 3-0 on it, so
yeah,
I'm happy.
True.
I'm happy with the difficulty, but we'll play to Sam. It's fine.
Which players in the AFC South have mums named Karen?
Well, that would be tough. That would be tough. But just a quick rundown is I've got 3 players listed down here and 3 stats for each of those. And I'm going to list off the players' stats, and Matt and Sam are going to go head to head, taking turns to guess who they think the player is. And winner takes all. I don't know what you take. Winner take it all.
Take a point on the year.
Take a point on the year. Here we go. Yeah, that'll be a good way of doing this. So
we playing match play.
Yeah.
You know what I'll do is I'll do 1 stat per 1 guess each, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So we'll kick it off with player 1, who is a quarterback.
Okay.
And Sam, I believe you should start this one.
Okay.
Just cause. First stat is touchdown percentage.
Oh, right, that's why I start.
That's one of Sam's favourites.
It's my favourite stat.
Oh,
it's my favourite stat.
And that is 3.9%.
Is this on a season or on his career?
Probably should have mentioned that. That is from 2019. So all stats are from 2019.
3.9% touchdown. So that's a bit below what you'd expect from a standard kind of player. A standard NFL quarterback, I would expect to be in the range of 4.5 to 5, really. 4.5 to 5, I think. So 3.9%, lower end of average. I'm going to go Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Incorrect. Over to you, Matt.
Oh,
Who are you feeling
have
on this one?
think. I'm stumping a bit here.
It's
running
very
short
tricky.
on names. Let me have a quick think.
It's very
You've got to take a wild punt early on. Wait for the stats to develop.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like we need more stats on this one to just go off a touchdown percentage because, I mean, this could be someone who only threw 100 passes all season as like a backup.
I'm just going to take a punt on Sam Darnold. I don't know.
Incorrect. So the second stat is that he was sacked 34 times in 2019.
34 times. Are we allowed? How many games did he play?
Yeah, sure. He played every game.
Yeah.
He played every game.
Oh, if I'd have known that, I wouldn't have gone with Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
So he played in every game. He was sacked 34 times, and he had a touchdown percentage of 3.9%.
Correct.
Right, that is 34 sacks. Of course, that's not an awful lot of sacks.
No.
Is it? Is it Derek Carr?
Incorrect.
Okay, glad I was about to take that. That's who I was going for there. I can see why you've lent that way.
I'm just thinking, kind of got legs, didn't have a great O-line, so that's still about 2 sacks a game.
It's not Derek
Wasn't
Carr,
putting up a lot of points. Who else played in every game and was very...
I don't want... I mean, I'm saying I don't think this is it, but I'm still going to guess it. It's unlikely, but maybe Matt Ryan?
Incorrect.
Nah,
It's
nah,
not Matt
He had a
Ryan.
down year. Maybe not that much of a down year.
Yeah, I don't think he will have had that much of a down year.
Yeah.
The third and final stat.
There's going to be people sat watching this that off the first thing was like, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
They had a completion rate of 66%.
Oh,
Last season, of course, this is for. Percentage of passes completed.
I think
66%.
A bit of me wants to say, a little bit of me wants to say, and I'm not saying this, I don't say it, but a little bit of me wants to say Mitch Trubisky, but I don't think his completion percentage is that high.
Mine is 66%.
I think he hovers around 60% most years. But then again, he might have actually just had a lot of really rubbishy, meaningless checkdowns. But he didn't. Did he play in every game? He got put. Did he start every game, this quarterback?
Yes, he did.
Right, he started. So I don't think Trubisky started every game.
It's a tough one.
Oh, this is tricky. This is a tricky one.
Gonna have to hurry here.
Kyle Allen.
Incorrect.
That was the name that went through my head at first.
I feel like Matt might have it. I don't know. He's got the look.
Oh. You've got a lot more confidence in me than me right now, apparently.
Some difficult stats here for us, James.
Wow.
If Matt can't get this, it's going to be 0-1. We're going
are we after this? Do we have do we do a tiebreaker on each player if you give us the division? Actually, maybe division's too much, but an AFC NFC kind of thing, or
what we'll do is I'll give you the subdivision, and then it'll be just quickest one out.
Quickest to it. Okay.
Because
I'm gonna throw a name out there. I'm just going with guys who had down years off that touchdown percentage, but I'm maybe thinking Baker.
Incorrect. It was a down year. It definitely was a down year for this guy. In my opinion.
All right.
Okay. So here we go. This is tense.
All right.
Actually, I'll give you a record.
Yeah, that would actually.
Okay. All right.
I'll give you the record.
Yeah.
And we'll do first name to shout out. The first person to shout out.
And then, should we say if we haven't got it off record after maybe like 10, you throw out the thing? Because I'm not confident. I think we should just go straight to subdivision if I'm honest.
I mean, there's only there's probably only like 28 players it could actually be who started all 16 games. Not even that.
And you've listed 6 of them so far.
Yeah, so come on.
We're on the ropes.
Come on, James.
Here
give us the record.
5-11.
5-11. He went 5-11 last year. Just trying to think.
10, right. Division.
Philip Rivers.
Philip Rivers. He's going to have done it before the division came out. Philip Rivers. That is the guy.
Oh.
So
The worst is-
last year.
I was
That
early
is
doors. I
wild.
was like, Chargers? Nah, I can't. Nah, maybe not. Maybe
Well,
not.
I mean, looking at these stats, I was a bit surprised by some of them. I mean, some of them were just unlike him from the past few years. In particular, the sort of the touchdown percentage was down for him. I believe the sacks were about average, I think, for him, and completion was probably above average, actually. In fairness, I think he averaged about 64.7 actually for completion. So,
right,
it's,
got the banker in there. Then
interesting.
we got the 1-up.
Okay.
So what? 1-0, 1-0, Matt.
1-0.
Which I
Come
believe
on
is
then,
what happened
James.
last time as well.
Come on then, James. Hit me with the next one. I've got to get
Right,
back into this.
Player 2.
You happy guessing first still?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Let's
think
do
it's
it.
fair because
Let's
1-0
smash
down
it.
on that.
Fine by me.
Come on.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah. So
Yeah,
player
like,
2
okay.
With the first pick.
is a strong safety, and
Yep.
the stat
Oh,
is
God.
13 quarterback hits. And this again is in 2019. These stats are all from 2019
13 quarterback hits.
for strong safety.
So it was 13. That's a lot for a safety.
Oh, I have no idea.
It is.
That's a lot for a safety. So this is someone
Career
who brings they blitz a lot. Tyrann Mathieu.
Incorrect.
Oh, I'm gonna really expose myself as a fantasy football player now. So I'm like, if it ain't offense, I ain't knowing. Strong safety. I don't know if he's strong, but Jamal Adams. Is he?
He's done it again.
Oh, I didn't think
2-0.
you'd give it. I didn't
2-0.
think you'd make it that obvious.
Purely
so I
just
didn't
because
go for
James
Jamal
Whitney had a
Adams.
great year, sort of thing. I was just like, I'm gonna go top name off the board.
I didn't
'cause
think
it's
you'd
one of
go
the-
as obvious as Jamal Adams for a safety. I thought you'd go a little bit.
Hey, last
like,
time you said I
deeper.
was too niche. This time you're saying I'm not niche enough.
It's just
Yeah,
because
but
he's losing.
come on.
Yeah. Well,
I'm so glad. If I hadn't have got that, I'd have been on
Alright,
the
okay. Give me the
absolute
last one at least.
ropes.
At
I'd have
least
been
see if I
done.
could.
I'll just read off the last two stats because I wrote them down, so it feels a waste
Oh,
to
you've done
write
the
them down,
research.
not say them. 1 interception, 61 yards returned. I thought maybe you'd get it after that one. And then 61 solo tackles on the year as well.
I
Big
got
year.
so lucky
Big
that
year.
it was that.
To be fair, 13 hits from the strong safety position is quite impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
he was bringing the house. I can only imagine how he's going to be on that Seahawks D.
Oh, it's gonna be
Very
incredible.
exciting, I think.
Mhm.
Right, so this round,
This one's for pride, mate.
this one is for
one's
pride.
I don't want to get whitewashed.
Please be an offensive player.
It is.
Okay.
It's a running back.
All right. Fine.
An offensive player, is it Deshaun Jackson?
No.
Oh,
boy.
offensive. I thought you meant like offensive.
Okay.
Jeez, we're stooping to that
Moving
level.
on.
Yeah, I'll give you the stat before we get cancelled.
Might have to cut that bit out.
Oh, let's stay in.
Right, first stat. His last season, 2019, he had 4 rushing touchdowns.
Did you say what position he played, or are we just getting
Running
offensive
back.
player? Running back. Oh, that's Leonard Fournette.
Well, it's not. So, on to you, Matt.
Oh, okay.
The confidence there
Oh!
sounds
Oh,
Penny Seahawks.
incorrect. Next stat. The 129 total touches last year. Oh,
that's not much.
you thought he had it?
That's you've thrown me off there. 129. That's really not much, is it?
It's not, no.
Boston Scott.
Incorrect.
Actually,
Matt.
he only played like 4 games at the end of the season, didn't he? That was a stupid.
Well, that was a wild guess.
Yeah, that was me getting bold.
You've got to do it sometimes, though.
Oh, this might be way off on the touches. Like Melvin Gordon.
Ah, that's what I was thinking.
Incorrect.
Oh,
So on to the third and final stat. He had 28 receptions last season.
I see.
Oh, I don't want to say it, but I think it might. Is it Kareem Hunt?
Incorrect.
I was about to guess that.
Incorrect.
That was about to be my guess, so I'm glad you.
Oh,
Right.
going to the
rushing
wire.
touchdowns, 129 total touches, 28 receptions.
Ooh, what about?
I think. Trying to look at.
You both.
I've just got a list of like team names up just to try and like spark something off in my head. Todd Gurley?
Incorrect. What would you like now? Would you like games started? Would you like the division he was in last year?
Should we go games started?
Yeah, give me games started.
Again?
Give me games started and record.
Right. So I've only got games started and games played here.
Yeah. That's
okay.
Cool. Okay.
Give me games started at least.
Started 9. Played in 13.
Started 9, played in 13.
Oh, days.
And you know what? I'll throw in a random stat. What? This is tough. Longest reception was 23 yards, which is basically a pointless stat.
I've got it. If we don't get it, I think off these next guesses,
right, so,
I think James gets the point.
Wait, so he started.
He
started 9 games.
Yep, played 13.
Played in 13, so he's missed 3 for whatever reason. Either he wasn't on a roster, or he was not brought. So maybe he was brought up to the active roster because of an injury. Oh,
who knows?
Could it be Marshawn Lynch?
Incorrect.
Incorrect.
Right, Matt.
I thought you had it then for a second.
And then we'll go first guy to shout out after this attempt.
I've got a name.
I really don't. I don't. Think
I've got a name in my head, but
this
I'm
is
not
a real
sure.
See, normally when Sam says that, Matt goes and gets it.
David Johnson.
Yeah.
No, not this time.
No, not this time. I
It's,
see. He pulled part of the season.
Started 9 games.
Okay, here we go.
How many games did Miles Sanders start? Because he was splitting time with. Is it Miles Sanders?
It's not Miles Sanders.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So what we get now? The record. Yeah.
I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
And then it's just bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
Started in 9. Played 13. But the team played more than 16 games in the season, and could have been disappointed not to have played any more.
LaShawn
McCoy. That is the answer.
Yeah.
Got himself a ring.
Very nice.
Yeah.
But we did
That
mention
makes
him earlier.
sense
That's why I thought maybe.
Okay.
No. Good point.
Never even popped into my head. Not gonna lie.
Sean McCoy, player 3.
I think maybe for the next time we do this, you need to give us a bit more to go on here.
I feel like the stats they're quite hard to, without being like maybe a guy who's like hit the career, like the season high for that position.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
Yeah.
It's a hard round, in fairness. You know
it's a very hard round.
As I won, I love the way you did it, mate. Beautifully done.
Same again next week,
1-0.
right?
So I'll
1-0.
get. I believe, as they say in Call of Duty, we'll get them next time.
We'll see about that.
That's probably copyrighted. Actually, we won't be able to put this on the YouTube.
Mute that bit out and see what happens. However, that brings us to a very nice close to today's episode. It's been a very enjoyable first episode. I think we can all agree.
I've had a great time.
Yeah.
We've had the highs, we've had the lows.
Do you know what? Should we do it again next week?
Oh, go on then.
Same again next week.
Maybe we should just do it
Why
all
not?
season.
Go on then. Got nothing
That's
better
a great
to do.
idea.
Oh,
What?
it's almost like they'll go out every Thursday. The whole
Every
season.
Thursday? The whole season?
Yeah,
How
but
weird.
not every Thursday.
This is exciting
Every
times.
Thursday.
It's exciting
every
times
Thursday?
to be a Brit Iron
Every
listener.
Thursday on the YouTube.
On the YouTube.
I don't know what Matt's doing with the overlays
Oh,
now.
we're
Yeah,
shuffling.
sure, actually.
You
You
might
have switched
notice
it around.
we've upgraded the overlays. We've upgraded.
Okay, so for now, I won't point anywhere.
Yeah.
However, as we've mentioned, we are on YouTube, so go ahead and check us out. Go like, comment, and subscribe. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. We're at the Brit Iron. Go give us a follow. Check out what we've posted on there. Get involved. I would plug the Listen League, but actually we've already sort of made a start on that. We made the draw last night.
Yep. got our
on
other
the 2nd
11
of
guys.
August. So
We're in the process of contacting everyone who's going to be involved, and over the next week we'll get that sorted. And at some point in the next month, we will be doing a draft, which we will record. Of course, I believe the three of us are going to be looking after one. I think I think that might be an evening where we have a beer or two, make the draft, and
a lot of
do
arguments.
Yeah, have a lot of arguments because Matt will want Rashad Perryman.
James
in the
will
6th
cry.
round.
I would quit if we come to him. I'd quit. I'm out. of it.
I only want one. There's only one player that I'm gunning for, and we will get him. He will be on our team.
So if you're listening, please take Daniel Jones early doors.
Yeah.
Just so we can,
Now you've said that.
Frustrate Sam. It doesn't bother me and Matt. We don't care.
Yeah.
But just to spite Sam, that'll be
The 101 in our league, Daniel Jones. Sam's just like, I'm not even interested.
I'll just be swapping ownership to that team.
Well,
I'll ditch the Brit Iron boys and go with
so that's all it
whichever
takes.
team has the
Sorted.
has
Someone, I'll
Daniel
pay
Jones.
you. I'll PayPal you money. Daniel Jones 101. Trade you Sam as well.
However, for now, for today's episode, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next time.